Light streams into the room. It's morning. I know I have to get up, but try as I might, I can't seem to rise from bed. My body is a bit stiff and I can't move. My breath comes out in harsh puffs and sweat clings to my body. It feels gross. Oh, it happened again, I thought. It's been a while since I've had this dream. The memories have faded. Just as I was about to forget, I have this dream. It feels like someone showed me this dream. As if to make sure I won't forget. The dream always begins at night. In pitch darkness, my mother and I sprint through the town's back alley, a mixture of smells thick in the air. Chasing after us are several bad-looking men. As we pass by other people, we desperately cry out for help, but those onlookers turn away from us in disgust after a single glance. They ignore me and my mother, walk away from us as if they hadn't seen anything. As if we were just air. No one is willing to help us. The country my father brought us to was said to be the largest on the continent. Everything from as far as the eye could see was beautiful, big, and bustling. The country was overflowing with goods and people. However, such a great place naturally drew the interest of outsiders. Immigrants flocked over like moths to a flame. But these people were from all over the world with clashing cultures. They were alien, uncivilized and dirty, a hindrance to all. As such, no one batted an eye if a crime was committed before them. Even if that crime was murder. No, they would be all the more happier that the immigrant population was cannibalizing themselves. Law and order. Justice. Don't make me laugh. The country's inhabitants had come to a tacit agreement. This was a place where all would be forgiven. Every few months, my father returned home from his business trip. Listening to his travel tales was one of the few pleasures in my life. In his stories, he often mentioned a smaller neighboring country. Despite its size, its immigrants lived ordinary and happy lives. It seemed like something out of a dream. Every time, my father would tell me and my mother that someday, once he'd saved enough money, we would all go there. Then one day, my father didn't come back from his business trip. Several months rolled by, but he was still nowhere in sight. My mother believed he would definitely return one day. I, however, had my doubts. Perhaps he lost his life on his way home. Or, maybe he found a better life and no longer felt like coming back. One day, after getting paid for finishing my shift, I went shopping at the market on the way home. And I encountered a group of gangsters. I took my mother and ran. However, we were no match for the speed. The dream always starts when we are cornered in the alley, and repeats over and over again. The wind whipping past as I run. My mother's screams. Over and over. The fear gripping my entire body as I dash off without her. I run. And run. And run. Daggers of guilt pierce my heart, causing me to come to a full stop. Questions of how I could abandon my own mother attack my psyche ceaselessly. I condemn myself. Without wasting time, I turn around and run in the direction from which I had fled. But, when I finally reach that place, my mother lies cold and still, the whole ground drenched in red. I scream. It's good if I wake up at this moment. Though I would have a headache or feel nauseous for the remainder of the day, that's still better than the dream continuing. For this dream has a continuation. When I arrive at the scene of my fallen mother, our pursuers catch sight of me. Fear devours me as I make a dash for it. Yet it was too late. Despite my struggle, I am beaten and kicked to the ground, my legs broken until they lay limp. In the end, they catch me. Disgusting smiles slide across the faces. One of the men wraps his putrid hands around my neck, squeezing tighter and tighter. I claw at his hands, trying to peel them off, head flailing, legs still as motionless as before. I can't breathe. With each passing second I grow more and more in a panic. And then my vision dies red. Once again, just like always, my sight abruptly cuts off. Then after a while, it returns. And then, before me lie corpses, scorched black and torn to pieces. Blood and organs are scattered on the ground. And my hands, the dripping with blood. A hoarse scream rips from my throat once more. Whenever I wake up during this scene, that's when I know that day will be the worst. To this day, I still can't believe I was able to stumble into this village alone. After my mother begged me to escape the country by myself, that I had to live, I did exactly as she had told me. I gathered the money my mother and I had steadily saved up. The smuggling fee was expensive, but I managed to leave the country by way of hiding in a livestock wagon. From then on, I did my best not to come into contact with other people or demons. I made my way east, running or hiding whenever needed. Read this at perpetualdaydreams.com. I held on to that belief that the country to our east was amazing, relying on my father's stories to fuel my determination. As long as I reach the promised land, I will find happiness. In my childish mind, I also dreamed of the possibility of meeting him again. Yes, I had to believe. Even when my steps no longer kept in a straight line, my vision growing hazy, I continued to walk, holding on to my belief. While I still had money, I bought food for myself. But soon, the last of my money ran out. However, I was resilient. I hunted small river fish and game, gathered wild fruits and edible weeds. And I managed to survive. Since I looked like a vagrant, no one tried to approach me anymore. I walked and walked, just kept walking. Starving and sleep deprived, I finally collapsed in the middle of the road. I must have looked like I died. A good Samaritan came across my prone body and felt pity for me. Thinking I should at least be mourned, he carried me to the church. At that point, I was already standing by death's door. As I was laid into the child-sized coffin, I suddenly opened my eyes, surprising the nun who was by my side. I escaped being buried in the graveyard by a hair. Eventually, the nun took me in and raised me. Whether this was the amazing country my father had always spoken of, I do not know. However, compared to how life was back then, this place was definitely like a dream. That's why to me, this place and the country my father always mentioned were one and the same. They were both the places promised in our dreams. I am now attending the municipal school. Although I wanted to work after I graduated from elementary, my caretaker pleaded for me to continue my education. So, here I am. The nun is a very good person. She's taken in orphans from all over the place. The kids leave when they become independent, but new ones always replace them. As such, the church could barely afford to roof them. More robust than the average person and not a stranger to physical labor, I had planned to work to help support the church. To help ease the financial burden. Yet, my caretaker always dons a troubled expression whenever I mentioned this idea. She would say the money I earned belonged solely to me. I just wanted to do what I could do. As I enter the dining hall, Granny catches sight of me. Oh my, Al, are you okay? Do you have a fever? I don't. That's a lie. Your face is red. I don't want to be told this by a granny with apple-like cheeks. Well, even though that's true, I'm fine. I can move without a problem. But still, Granny sighs. You're totally indifferent toward yourself, what a troubling child. Please don't push yourself too hard. I know. I wonder if you actually do know or if you're just saying that as usual. I'll be back. Just when her nagging begins, I make a quick break for it, grabbing coffee and some bread before heading out. As soon as I step into the classroom, I feel a plethora of stares aimed at me, ranging from goodwill to hostile. Like always, it's a bit annoying. What is it about me that's so interesting? As usual, at the center of the room is a silver-haired boy. Lian, the second son of the lord who lives in the biggest mansion in the village. Noticing my arrival, he narrows his ice blue eyes, tilts his chin up slightly, and smirks. He gives off the appearance of looking down on me, but his gaze is too gentle to really be arrogant. It makes me feel like laughing a little. Which reminds me, when I had first arrived at this village, he looked at me differently. His gaze was not as gentle. In fact, those eyes had looked at me with scorn, as though he hated being too close to me. Like those eyes from where I came from. Since when has this changed? The person he was long ago and the person he is now are as distinct as night and day. It's like they're different people altogether. A little while ago, I met Lian at the church after I got injured at work. I was surprised to find him collapsed in a heap at the bottom of the stairs. Was he that weak? I had no clue. This had never crossed my mind. He's as strong as ever with the sword. Unfortunately, I've yet to beat him in a spar. Upon closer inspection, his face was blue, body on the verge of freezing to death. Extremely exhausted. One phrase zipped through my mind at that moment: magic deficiency. From what I've heard in the past, that's what it looked like. Was it similar to a chronic disease? I hadn't a clue. He immediately refused when I offered to take him to the hospital. And when I offered to take him home instead, he refused that as well. What did he want then? He refused all of my attempts to help him, and in the end he told me to leave him alone. He was like a brat throwing a tantrum. What happened? He was usually a reasonable and exemplary honor student. Yet, he actually said he didn't want to go home. Even though I didn't have all the facts at hand, I was starting to think Leon's running away from something. Was that the reason he escaped to the church? He was always putting on a bold front, trying to hide his weaknesses. And although he talked like a brat, all audacious and conceited, in reality, he was a warrior. I've proof of this. Whenever he saw me hurt, he'd fly to my side and give me a recovery item, face all pale. Whenever he saw someone in trouble, despite what he said, he always lent a hand. At heart, I was sure he was a terribly kind person. That was why he was popular with the middle and lower class students. But maybe in order not to be underestimated by his fellow upper class students, he tried hard to act like he wasn't. Because he looked like he'd faint at any moment, I forcibly performed a magic transfer. And also to return the favor. But it seems like I'd overdone it. Now he was unable to move. Well, I also thought I was overdoing it. But it had felt too pleasant. For a moment, I forgot myself, and kept silent. Leon's eyes were trembling, so it must have felt pleasant for him too. Finally running out of energy, he stopped fidgeting around. I carried him to my room and laid him on my bed for the time being. As I was about to pull away, he clung onto me like a child, eyes still shut in slumber. From his lips left soft and desperate pleas. "Don't die," he muttered. "Don't leave me. I wasn't dead yet. I'd just fallen off the roof." The old man was alive too. I turned my attention to his face, thinking he'd woken up. He was still asleep. Shivering, he latched onto my shirt. He was crying. What the could it be? Was he scared? I mean, lonely? No, that couldn't be it. Leanne was always surrounded by people and he had his family too. At least that should have been it, but, now that I thought about it, even when there were people physically around him, Leanne sometimes sported a lonely look in his eyes. And I knew those eyes well. They were similar to my mother's when she'd yearned for my father's return, a shadow crossing her gaze. For some reason, that same shadow existed in Leon's eyes. When I saw it, I felt a little nostalgic, and also, a little relieved, because then I knew that that shadow existed everywhere. Meanwhile, Leon's staring intently at me while I was engrossed in my thoughts. It's strange. Usually, he looks on forward. His brow slightly furrows. "Alfred, you." Before he can finish, the bell rings. The teacher enters the classroom and he flips back forward in his seat. Translated by Sleepchaser. TLCED by Cheesaholic. Somehow, I was able to hold out all day. Since I had that dream this morning, my head's been pounding and I feel like death. I'm so nauseous I can't even stomach lunch. Usually, people give me food, but today I refused them all. Otherwise, I might vomit it all out. I have a shift at the bar today. Since the night wage is higher, I earn a lot more relatively for working a short amount of time. I can't take a break. The events of the day blur as I recall them, from the time that class ended to the point when I clocked out. On my way to the carriages, I come across some drunk guys who are basking in the nightlife, 5 people in total. They tell me to hand over my money, like typical thugs. I refuse, and they move to beat me up. This day sucks. My vision shakes, unable to keep still. I probably have a fever. Fortunately, I can still move. I'm aware that my body is more robust than an average person's. I down each of them with a punch in the face. During the scuffle, I got hit with a bottle, so my left arm is a bit swollen, but that's all. It would be troublesome if someone notices the commotion, so I hurriedly leave. This isn't good. My vision is warping. I slam into something. Judging by the angry yelling, I must have bumped into someone. I fall to the ground, remaining there, unable to summon enough strength to stand up. My condition is especially bad today. When does the last carriage leave? If I don't make it in time, then it can't be helped. Granny might be angry, but in such an event I'll have to spend the night somewhere in town. Sighing, I close my eyes. Alfred, a familiar voice. I lift my heavy head slightly, turning to the direction of the sound. A small distance away and standing in front of a prestigious restaurant, one that looked like it would turn away people who didn't abide by the dress code, is Leanne. Silver-haired, round-eyed Leanne. He's wearing a light blue shirt without a wrinkle in sight, a brilliant white tie, and a dark blue velvet jacket paired with slacks. Silver strands are picked up by the breeze, flowing against milky white skin. Although his eyes are a shade of ice blue, a cold color, there is a touch of warmth somewhere within. Leanne stands up straight, posture impeccable. He's so beautiful that no one can possibly come up with a complaint about his appearance. He's dignified and eye-catching. It's certainly as the guys in class say, he looks like a prince from the country where the Queen of Spirits resides, far off in the west. To Leon's side is his family, his mother in a low-cut scarlet gown and his father and brother wearing black suits. They're all dressed to the nines. Next to Leon's father are several sharply dressed men. It's clear from a glance they obviously have high social standing. Are they having a formal gathering? Taking another glance at me, Leon turns and says something to his father. From the looks of the crinkled brows and frowns, they're having a dispute of some sort. In the end, he bows his head to his father's peers and his family. And he runs towards me. Hey, why are you coming over here? Don't you have more important business to take care of? No matter how you look at it, those people are big shots. Alfred, hey, are you okay? He kneels beside me in a panic, and tries to pick me up. Why are you here? How about you? Why are you laying on the ground like this? Don't surprise me anymore. Awah, and you're injured again. Why are you always getting hurt? How would I know? I want to ask that question myself. Leon slips my arm around his shoulders and hoists me up. He doesn't even mind getting his expensive clothes dirty. Shifting my attention back to the restaurant, I see Leon's father leading those men of the upper crust through the front entrance. His mother hides her mouth with a folding fan, eyes piercing through me as if I was something dirty. Something foul. And the way Leon's brother is glaring at me, if only looks could kill. Hold on a second. I'll call a coach over. Walking to the edge of the street, Leon sticks out his hand in a wave. Sure enough, one cruises to a stop in front of us. A coachman dressed in all black disembarks from the driver's seat, tipping his hat and bowing in one fluid and elegant motion. Where would you like to go, dear sirs? Please take us to the church in Lay's village, says Leanne. Understood. Please embark. The driver shoots a quick glance at me. Shall I offer you assistance? Yes. That will be helpful, thanks. After opening the door, the coachman gets into position, standing opposite of Leanne as he lifts me by the arms into the back seat. As I sink into the fluffy cushioning, I'm struck with a hazy impression. What a high-class coach. I've difficulty stringing together thoughts though. Like everything's blurring together at once. Without a doubt I must have a fever. My body's burning up and the sweat just keeps flowing. Leanne, who's sitting right next to me, pulls out a fancy handkerchief, sparing no time in wiping my face. You're feverish, so you were feeling ill today after all. Your face was subtly red this morning. I mean, why are you this injured? Where on earth have you been fighting again this time? What do you mean, again? I'm not always brawling. I'm not a delinquent. I was dealing with some drunkards. Drunkards. So you were beaten up by them? Nope. I took them out. Took them out, really? With your body like that? You really are abnormal. Leon's eyes pop. Then he smiles in a strange way. He places a palm on my forehead, brows furrowing. Your fever's really high. Could it be that you still, RN nothing? Maybe it's a good idea to pay Dr. Kumar another visit after all, says Leanne. I shake my head. I don't have the money for it now. I'll be better after I lie down. Is that so? No, but, maybe even for you that's, a bit of a stretch. You should really take some medicine. I don't need it. But, Leon's brows are still crinkled, as though he were hesitating. His eyes are shut. Right, I remember a similar incident. On that day, my condition was as bad as it is now. I was involved in a massive brawl, and in the end I fell flat to the ground. My memory of that day is hazy at best. The line between reality and fantasy remains blurred. According to Granny, a kind traveler found me. He took me to the hospital before bringing me back to the church. He even paid for my medicine. Then he left without leaving his name. Apparently. What is that even? It's way too cool. Impossible. These kinds of people don't exist at this present age. That's what I thought, but both Granny and the kids gave me the same story when I asked them. Could it really be for real? Leanne rests his palm on my neck, perhaps to measure my temperature. Thin white fingers. A cool palm, pleasant to the touch. Spreading from his hand is a mild fragrance. As always, Leanne smells wonderful. It's a faint sweet scent, subtle like a flower, and helps me relax. Back then, when I had been ambushed in the forest, I smelled a scent similar to this one. In fact, the one and the same. Magic abundance. At the sound of my words, Leanne gasps and raises his head. Granny said that that was what I had suffered through that day. That was what the traveler had told her. I see. Yeah, that may be it, he says. I heard that the body would accumulate magic power if there's too much being produced. Is that so? Why, yeah. Ah, that's right. I see. If there's too much magic, then if you decrease it, can you give me a bit of your magic power? You might feel better if you transfer some to me. Of course, we'll be using the skin contact method. You know what to do, right? There's a hint of pink on his cheeks as he presents his wrist. Why would you go to this extent for me? I'm in the lowest socio-economic class and live in the church. I'm an orphan. You know neither my lineage nor where I immigrated from. Yet you return to help me. You even give me absurdly expensive medicine. Maybe no, I'm getting ahead of myself, but because I left him hanging, Leanne, whose face is growing red, is starting to flare up in anger. What is it? I'm telling you to do this even though it's embarrassing for me. I've had enough. If you don't want to do it, then fine. Just lie there in a clump until we reach the church. As soon as he finishes speaking, I grab his wrist. Focusing below the chest, I perform the technique, relying on the memory from the class lesson. From the palm of my hand flows magic power, seeping deep within Leanne's flesh the moment the heat flares from my skin. Little by little, the slow pace is driving me insane. The relief comes, but barely. It does. It doesn't. My condition dangles like a trapeze artist, a delicate balancing act. At this rate, it'll take half a day before I'm better. The sun's about to set. As I reveal my thoughts, Leanne glares at me, face flushing once more. Stop complaining. I'm doing this for your sake, so be grateful. That's true, but I collapse onto him and he bears the full weight of my body. Panicked, Leanne tries to support me. But I am too heavy for him, and we end up falling into the space between the seats and the carriage door. I've wondered about this before, but has he always had such a thin and light body? I'm sure he's taller than me. Oh, I see. It seems that before I knew it, I've already grown bigger than him. Read this at perpetualdaydreams.com. From the looks of it, Leanne hit the back of his head on the carriage. He sucks in a few grunts of pain, obviously irritated. He pushes back against me with both hands using all his strength. It's painful. Like I'm going to die. I might not make it, and I can't suppress it any longer. My magic essence is about to burst out. I might blow up this carriage. When I say these words, he immediately stops moving. I smile wryly within my heart. Although the feelings of guilt accumulate bit by bit, I choose to ignore it. Ah, you're really too gentle. So much that it makes me worry. Though I know I shouldn't say such things when I'm the one taking advantage of you. I seal his lips with my own. Despite trembling ferociously, Leanne doesn't turn away. Rather than pouring my magic power into him like a rushing river, I let it slowly trickle in. It feels pleasant mixing it with another person's magic, with Leanne's calm magic. When our tongues brush, he shivers hard again. He looks pained, so I release his lips. He breathes deeply, shoulders heaving. It seems he'd stopped breathing. Although he looks annoyed when I tell him to breathe through his nose, he doesn't say a word. Maybe he just couldn't. Is a little more okay. Letting it rush in is fine too. Hearing my words, Leanne blushes, face burning with anger. His eyes wander, and after looking like he would burst into tears, he squeezes them shut. A show of resolve for his decision. Does that mean it's fine? No way. He seemed so against it before. I know I'm the one who asked, but is it really okay? Still, with his permission granted, I carefully press my lips onto his and search for his tongue. Both Leanne's tongue and body tremble throughout. But not once does he try to escape. The hands that attempted to push me away before now clutch at my clothes. Warmth settles in my belly, flaring hotter and ever more daring. Soon, I feel as though I can't restrain it any further. It's getting dangerous. Whenever my nose catches the calm and gentle fragrance from that time, I feel comfortable. Without a doubt it was you. You were the one who had saved me back then, the impossibly kind traveler. I'm confident that if I tell you this, you'd run away at lightning speed, so I keep quiet. Since he allows me to do this much, maybe I can do a little bit more of what I want. Pushing against that thin and shivering body, I cover him with my own on all sides so that he can't escape. And I press our lips harder together. By the time we arrive at the church, I'm able to walk on my own. Usually, it takes a whole day for me to recover. The symptoms are spasmodic, so keep forgetting about them. Though unlike last time, I didn't open the dams to my magic power and pour it into Leanne without holding back. I've recovered enough. That's good. Leaning against his seat, cheeks flushed and panting, Leanne glares at me with half-lit eyes. I tried my best to moderate the amount of magic I transferred to him, but it seems I still went a bit overboard. There was a flush nape in front of me. I couldn't help leaning in. Spreading from his skin is a faint sweet scent, and my mind feels suspended in a wreath of clouds. Surely it's sweet to the taste. Yes, definitely sweet. But if I trace my tongue over it, he'll be angry for sure. As my nose just about brushes his skin, Leanne stirs. He grabs my shoulder and pushes me away, for once resisting. What are you doing? Just a little more. Dear customers, we have arrived. The church is just ahead. Oh. Were you in the middle of something? The coach driver beams a knowing grin. Hee. A secret rendezvous. Two people of different standing, sharing a love that can be stopped by no one. How nice. How enviable. It brings back memories of my youth, says the driver in a dramatic tone, nodding exaggeratedly. Well, I guess if you see a scene like this, that would be anyone's first impression. The curtain separating us from the driver is wide open, so he could see us clearly. Sure enough, Leanne hops to his feet, pushes me away with all his strength, and yells at the coachman, face red, "You're wrong. That's not it at all. I'm telling you it's different. What are you talking about? You're mistaken. This was a life-saving technique. Hee. Please rest assured, our Marlow City Carriage Association is committed to not divulging our customers' personal information. Following our motto of security and confidentiality, our service to our customers is our first priority. Therefore, please enjoy a quick and comfortable ride courtesy of our association. Thank you for your patronage. We sincerely look forward to being of service again." Whether or not that's something he's required to say to all his customers, the driver removes his hat in a playful gesture and waves in thanks, still with that sly grin on his face. I'm telling you, you've got the wrong idea. Damn it. This is all your fault. Gee, go on, get out of here. You bastard. With a bright red face, Leanne kicks at my feet then pushes me toward the door. I have no choice but to get off the carriage. I'm a bit disappointed. I want to touch Leanne more, but we are already at our destination. Upon disembarking, I suddenly remember something and look back. You saved me, Leanne. Thank you. Without your help, I would have been lying there all night. Leanne, who drove me out of the carriage, sports a blank expression. Placing a hand on his forehead as though he was shocked, he sighs. Lying there all night. I really couldn't get up. You have my gratitude. For some reason, Leanne's face is a ripe tomato. He quickly turns away. No need. Later. Hey driver, hurry up and move the carriage already. Understood. The coachman shuts the passenger door with a smile. Not a beat later, the carriage pulls away into the distance. I see the carriage off as I open the gates to the church. A soft, sweet fragrance teases my nose. I see. It seems a bit of Leanne's scent must have rubbed off on my own body. A large and glowing smile spontaneously spreads across my lips. There's no mistake. The scent from now and back then are one and the same. My senses are better than the average person's. I've found you at last. But I won't say it. Because if I do, I know you'll just run away. The next day, I head for school in the morning. As soon as I woke up, my physical condition was back to tip-top shape. Leanne sprints off in lightning speed whenever he catches sight of me, so the school day ends without us speaking to one another. I don't think he needs to go that far in avoiding me. Although it's me and I'm hardly a fragile person, it still hurts a bit. Well, I did overdo it. Since he runs away from me, I don't get the chance to apologize to him. So I decide to give it some time. Wait until Leanne calms down. I don't have a shift later, so I head to the library after school. According to the library's newsletter, the newest addition to the Silk Hat Detective series should arrive today. Just as I thought, I catch Leanne loitering in the building. He likes the same book genres as I do. As I approach him, he jumps in surprise, dashing off in a panic. But he changes his mind and turns and heads back toward me. Once again, his cheeks flush. He glares and points his finger at me. Forget about everything that happened yesterday. Forget it, okay. He hisses, though still within the acceptable range for a library. As usual, the honor student, he refrains from blowing over. Since he's talking so frantically, I answered that I will. The tension drains from his shoulders and he looks relieved. His face retains the blush and his long silver lashes tremble. I want to touch them so much. When I do so without realizing, he jerks away, livid. Don't touch me, idiot. He whisper shouts. Huh. Somehow, Leanne reminds me of something. Ah, I got it. He's like that standoffish stray neighborhood cat, silver-streaked and hard to miss. With its beautiful coat, it's probably someone's pet. The kids love chasing it around whenever they spot it. Even so, it still comes to the church. Maybe it enjoys playing with the kids after all. Occasionally, the cat would approach me. I'd sometimes sneak it some scraps from my part-time job. It would always approach you on its own, but as soon as you approach it, it would run away. And if it wasn't in the mood, it wouldn't let you touch it. Yeah, they're really similar. I wonder if you'll let me touch you once we're a little closer. I think this as Leanne escapes deeper among the bookcases, my eyes chasing after his disappearing figure. Translated by Sleep Chaser. TLCED by Chiazaholic.